the big news of the day is Monty Williams is fired, and he's supposedly owed $65 million. Now, there's a question, and we'll ask Mark Medina whether or not there's offset. And maybe the question becomes, as much as we all think that J.J. Redick is going to become the Lakers coach, will he become the Lakers coach, or would it be Monty Williams, or would Monty Williams join him as an assistant? But the bigger thing is, when your personal story is so powerful, it very much skews how we look at your professional story, right? Whereas there really should be some form of separation of church and state. Monty Williams, of course, suffered a tragedy beyond all measure when his wife was killed. Somebody, I believe, driving the wrong way in Oklahoma when he was an assistant with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like a supreme amount of tragedy, and he is a very, very religious guy. And being a guy who played at Notre Dame, and I played after him at ND, okay, and Monty, I don't know how many people know this, he missed a year and a half with a heart issue, okay, and this was in the days and years following Hank Gathers tragically dying, same era in college basketball, and so he had a heart issue, and it didn't end up holding him back from having a very good NBA career. But Monty Williams was fired and had barely been on the job, obviously, and paid $65 million. And what happens when a story like this goes is, now, obviously, being a coach, coaches always say, man, great job, terrible profession. But is it? This kind of goes hand in hand with Willie Mays dying. When Willie Mays dies, people say, oh, gone too soon. Is it? I'm not saying it's not incredibly sad that Willie Mays is no longer of this earth, but 93 years is, like, we're good. You hit the over, right? 93 years on this planet, you hit the over. And as much as Monty Williams hadn't hit the over in terms of how long he was the coach of the Detroit Pistons, it's also fair to say that, hey, if you want to pay me $65 million and not coach anymore, after getting, I think, $20 million and not coach anymore with the Phoenix Suns, we can call it good. Is it really a tragedy if a 52-year-old gets fired after just one season on the job? I don't think the answer is yes. I don't think that's being callous. That's just being sort of matter of fact, if you will. Just matter of fact. They lost 28 consecutive games. 28. But I think more than anything, it was two other factors. One, his inability or lack of desire to play some of the younger players and develop them. And then two, they hired a new boss. And we see this in coaching, obviously. In college, it's your athletic director, your president, new athletic director, new president, oftentimes new leadership with the head coach in football and basketball. And heck, in your job, in my job, if our leadership changes, there's a question as to whether or not we'll stay around. People want to bring in people that they've worked with before, that they know. They know how they work. Trajan Langdon's a Dookie. He's been around this league. He has not worked with Monty Williams. He takes over as president. What did you expect to have happen, especially when they lose 28 consecutive games? They went 0 for the month of November. 0 for. And while he rightfully got credit for resurrecting the Phoenix Suns, which really started during COVID, remember, there were some run-ins with DeAndre Ayton and other players, and eventually he was ousted. And he was fired just one season into a multi-year extension, just like he was fired just one season into a 6-year contract. The point is that while I feel incredible sympathy and empathy for what Monty Williams went through personally, and no one wants to move the whole coaching staff around and change, and it's bad, but $65 million, I just don't feel that sad. Just like, to a completely different sort of sense, Willie Mays was 93 years old. He was an absolute legend. My late father, when you talk about Willie Mays, his entire body would light up because he was such a magical personality and baseball player. But 93 years old is a good life. So is $65 million plus $20 million you got to walk away from the Phoenix Suns. It's a good life. Buyer, am I too callous the way I'm looking at this?
No, business is business.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't like firing a coach 1 year in, but he gets $65 million. If you want to pay somebody $65 million to not coach anymore, most people say, I'll take that check.
Yes, I'll do it. That's for sure.
Okay, so here's the question. I asked my guys this question today. You get $65 million, which, and everybody's like, well, what about it after taxes? Okay, fine, it's $40 million. What do you do? What do you do tomorrow?
Even if it's just 30, well, I would probably finish the week here at Fox Sports Radio. I don't know if I'd be back next week.
No, you got paid $30 million after taxes to not work at Fox Sports Radio.
Yeah, I would probably I would I'd probably try to buy a golf course. That's probably what I would do.
You go home to Lisa. That's a good one. You go home to Lisa and you're like, "Hey babe, good news, bad news." What's the bad news? Got fired. What's the good news? Got $65 million. Like, I don't even know how that feels. If that's wait, are you delivering? Is that bad news? Or is that good? Is that doubly good? How does that work?
I know. I think it's great news. It's right? One of those where the bad news is just pales in comparison to the awesome news that you're about to just drop.
Jason Stewart, you get paid $65 million to not show up at work ever again at Fox Sports Radio. What do you do?
That's my bankroll. I play poker for a living. I've been looking for a bankroll to play poker for a living and to go on the circuit and play all the tournaments, and that would be a nice start.
Sam?
I think I'm sleeping in first and then get up whenever I want.
Can you sleep in?
What?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you're maybe too anxious.
Yeah.
But whenever I do wake up, I'm probably going to give Merrill Lynch a call.
It's a wise move.
Sound investments. That's
Sound
exciting.
investments.
Get that money spread out.
Talk about
he's too young to remember E.F. Hutton when E.F. Hutton speaks.
Polar opposites. Sam's calling a financial advisor. Jason has bankrolled his gambling future.
Well, that money's going into a mattress first, and then right to the poker table.
I don't know, Jay. I would say that if you can make 10% for the rest of your life on $35-40 million, you can have a whole hell of a lot of fun.
Nah.
Just you can play poker based upon just the interest.
Yeah, just don't be like the executive with the Jaguars. Just try to spend that a little more wisely.
Who's the executive with the Jaguars?
That was the guy that spent the $22 million. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Bad bets.
But he didn't even try to manipulate his daily fantasy lineups. He just threw money at him, and they just lost money.
And how much did he lose? $20 million or something?
Oh yeah, $22 million, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would do the financial advisor to do thing. I would definitely buy a property. I would buy a couple properties. Just buy a couple properties that I want to go live at, and I think I would just go about my day. I don't know. It's pretty good. Like, you're 55 and you got untold sums of money, and you just live on the interest for a while. And when you buy stuff, you want to buy stuff. I mean, think about it. And then here's always been my question: if you have that much money, how much do you keep in your checking account? And do you check it when you go to the ATM? Like, anybody who's ever done this, I used to do it. I remember my first job at ESPN. I used to not get direct deposit forever. And then they were like, why don't you get direct deposit? Well, because I actually like picking up a check and seeing, that's a good check. You feel like you accomplished something, And I used to always keep it. For a long time, I kept it in checking so that when you run the ATM, you're like, ooh, there's a couple of zeros there. That's really fun. I do wonder if you have $80 million, in cash in the bank, do you keep it in checking just for the giggles of looking at it every time you run the ATM?
I would not. I'd keep a six figures in a checking account.
You have to rotate your phone to see the balance.
That's awesome.
I will say this about the Pistons. Do we even want to bring it back to the Pistons? I guess.
Yeah,
is my
sure.
first question.
It's fine. It's part of the story.
Yeah. There is a point as we're sitting there talking about this for this money that Monty Williams is going to get, that ownership is obviously going to have to pay, which Tom Gores probably doesn't care about if he allowed the move to happen. But what poor planning to just, and I understand that Trajan Langdon is coming in and taking over the front office, but a year ago, you couldn't envision that maybe you wanted to make a change, you wanted to have somebody oversee something, and your commitment a year ago was all right, this is the time we buckle down and we make a commitment, and then you do it with the head coach. You didn't do it with Troy Weaver. You didn't you're like, but Monty Williams is our guy. And then to obviously make a change, which isn't the direct change of firing Williams after one season immediately, but you bring in somebody new who wants to fire him, just is like, I mean, if you're a Pistons fan, like, it's like last year was just a complete waste of time. That's all it was. Not only that, like, you didn't even land any lottery picks in a bad draft. Like, just a complete waste of a year if you were a Pistons fan.
I just can't even fathom what it would be like to lose 28 consecutive games. You know?
Yeah.
I can't possibly fathom it. Not at all. And look, it was 2019. They finished 41 up, 41 down. Don Casey was his first year as coach. Remember, Stan Van Gundy was coach there. They made the playoffs once. The last time they won 50 games, it was when Flip Saunders was the coach. They won 59 games. That was in 2008. I mean, think about that. And we're working on 16 years of futility. They had 1 year under Stan Van where they finished above 500 at 44-38. 1 year. Okay? Since 2008, they finished above 500. That is absolutely nuts. That is absolutely nuts. So, yeah, I mean, poor planning. No one goes to that arena. They built it. Like, does anybody know they built a brand new arena and that no one goes to it?
Yeah, I don't.
It's just it's the deadest franchise I think right now in the NBA. I'm trying to see, and it's not just because of this year. It's because they've become completely irrelevant.
I called the Washington Wizards the Siberia of the NBA. Are the Pistons in worse shape than the Wizards?
I think so. What do you think, Beyer?
I would go with the Wizards. I mean, they,
being more or less relevant?
Less relevant.
Because they don't have the history.
Yes.
They don't have the recent history.
Correct.
Because the Wizards finished above 500 in 2017. They actually finished in first in their division. With Scotty Brooks, the first 2 years of Scotty Brooks, they went to the playoffs. Scotty had him in the playoffs 3 out of the 5 years. Randy Whitman had him in the playoffs 2 of the 4 years. By the way, they employed Flip Saunders as well. But they haven't had a 50. They had a 49-win season in 2017. They haven't had a 50-win season. Oh my gosh!
Well,
since 1979.
I think that we could do a pretty good job in naming 5 Pistons, from the team 20 years ago that won an NBA title. I'd be hard pressed for us to, over the last 20 years, name 5 popular Washington Wizards that even includes Michael Jordan. I mean, when I think of that, I think of, obviously John Wall, Bradley Beal. I think of that. I think of the Chris Webber, Juwan Howard days, and then Michael Jordan. That's what I think of. And I'm sure I'm missing somebody that's obvious, but that's who I think of when I think of the Washington Wizards.
What were you going to say there, Sam?
I have a question for all you guys. I want to know, I have one team in mind, but who is the most irrelevant, sad franchise in all of sports? I have a team in mind.
I mean, the A's.
Yes. Yep. The A's.
Are hard.
The A's are going to be playing in a minor league ballpark next year. They're the most sad and irrelevant franchise in all of sports.
There is a point of.
I don't know if they're that irrelevant though, Sam, and I'll push back on it because
the Vegas
Moneyball,
thing makes them a little more relevant, but they're still
what does
going to Vegas, but that's still what?
No. Moneyball makes them relevant, and they have been. The last 5 years have been really disastrous.
They actually made the playoffs like 3 years ago.
Yes, was it 20? I thought it was 20. Yeah, 2019 maybe. Yeah, but still,
that's 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago. But look at their attendance. They're a team without really a home. They're going to play in a minor league ballpark next year.
Yeah, I mean, but like the minor league ballpark, we could do the same thing with the Chargers when they moved as well. They played, in a soccer stadium that that they didn't sell out and seated 30,000 people.
It reminds me of a saying that I had to look up to make sure that I got it correct. Of the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference.
Yes.
And it's
A's, really good that you whipped that into a radio show, by the way.
Well, and I think it fits because the A's have actively tried to not win, which has made their fans hate their ownership. So there's like hate there. Like for a long time, I just felt the Tennessee Titans were so irrelevant in the NFL because they were just there. Like there wasn't any great player. They would be 9-7. They would be whatever. Like it was just, they were there. It wasn't that they were the worst team in the AFC South or the worst team in the NFL. They were just there and it didn't matter. And so that's where I feel like when you're talking about irrelevant, like you almost, it's not even of being bad. It's just like, are you there and nobody cares? Brooklyn Nets maybe. I mean, jeez. You're not even first in your own city. Completely irrelevant.
Oh, I don't think the Brooklyn Nets are irrelevant, though. I mean, and to the level of the A's or to the level of, like the Detroit Pistons, I have not thought of. The only reason I know anything about the Detroit Pistons is that Cade Cunningham's on the team. That's it. And that's it. I couldn't tell you who else is on the. They got one. They drafted one of the twins. I'm not sure which one from
the
last
Thompson
year.
twins. Yeah.
Yes. But other than that, I don't know anything other than they lost 28 consecutive
Jaden Ivey.
Yeah. Not
anyway.
Pro. And they made mistake after mistake after mistake. But that is absolutely fascinating. It's a great question. Who's the most irrelevant team in the NFL?
I'd put the Arizona Cardinals in that conversation.
They made the playoffs 2 years ago?
I would actually just argue that they have Kyler Murray, who we do talk about. But
yeah, they had J.J. Watt at the end. They tried the retirement plan of some of those guys as well. Jacksonville had been irrelevant for so long, and then, of course, they won a playoff game. And I think they had some relevance when they, you had a disastrous hire, but they did hire, Urban Meyer, and that made them at least relevant, even if it was in an embarrassing fashion.
I think Jacksonville is easy because they're kind of the punching bag. But, I mean, they do have name players that we know.
Yeah. Well, that's the power of the NFL is that they're able to kind of cycle through these teams to where they all have some form of relevance within a 5-year span, whereas the NBA does not, Major League Baseball does not. What about the Detroit Tigers? Are they in that? I don't remember. I don't know anything about the Detroit Tigers in any recent history. And that's a franchise that if you go back to, I don't know, like 2013 or so, maybe before that, they had an unbelievable list of talented players. But I'm not sure I could name a Detroit Tiger right now. Sam, can you name a Detroit Tiger?
Did he just retire? Is it Abreu?
That's
you're wrong.
Incorrect.
Who am I thinking
Jose
of?
Abreu, who was released by the Astros.
You're thinking of Miguel Cabrera.
Oh, I'm sorry. That just
that's
shows
who it
you
was.
that I
Okay.
was not even certain about who I was talking about on the Tigers.
Yeah, their best hitter is Riley Green.
Tigers have been irrelevant for a long time.
Yeah. That is amazing.